South Korea, ranked 28th in the world by FIFA. Asian giants in this tournament who qualified for their very first World Cup in 1954. Fast forward 32 years to Mexico, and they have been perennials ever since. In Switzerland 1954, they became only the second Asian team to appear in the World Cup, with the ghosts of war still in their eyes. With one spot in the tournament up for grabs, they had to travel to Japan to play 2 qualifying matches as the Japanese were denied visas for obvious reasons. Only soldiers were allowed to play, and the Army's team managed to defeat the Japanese. This would be the highlight of the story because the South Koreans suffered 2 heavy defeats at the hands of the Hungarians and the Turkish, with the goalkeeper setting a record for the most goals conceded in a single tournament. Forgettable moments at best. 32 years on, Mexico 1986, and the South Koreans were back to stay, landing in an incredible group. Despite scoring their first ever goal in the finals, Diego Maradona was too much for them, as he was for most in this edition. A respectable draw versus Bulgaria followed in the pouring rain to give them a chance, but the reigning champs were their third opponent, and the Italian machine rolled over. Speaking of Italians, Italy 1990, a dominant showing in the qualifiers without a defeat in 11 matches, was awarded with a horror group first 3 giants of the World Cup. They only managed 1 goal from a brilliant free kick against the Spanish in the second game. Belgium and Uruguay were way too much for them, sending them crashing out in disappointing fashion. 1994 in the United States of America. The story starts in qualifying. A tough road left them needing help from other results as they lined up against an enemy that went far beyond the football pitch. A 3-0 win over the North Koreans. Job done. That's their part. The miracle of Doha came over the airwaves to the South Koreans as an Iraqi dream crusher scored 17 seconds from time, sank the Japanese, and sent the South Koreans across the Pacific to American shores. Buoyed by this, they managed to draw the Spanish, gaining a bit of revenge for the last time out. Another tough draw versus the Bolivians left them with a slim chance versus the German masterclass in a thriller in Dallas, where they would fall just short, 3-2. 4 years later, back in France, 1998. It's always interesting when a national hero takes the helm as the manager of the squad, and this tournament was no different. 3 minutes after taking the lead, the same man who scored the goal gets sent off for a wild challenge, and their opponents Mexico took full advantage with 3 second-half goals. After a horrifying defeat at the hands of the Dutch, the memory of the coach's storied history was tarnished beyond repair, and he was sacked right there in the middle of the tournament. Playing for pride against the Belgians to a 1-1 draw left them with something to remember on the ride back across the ocean, but that was all. With Gus hitting at the helm 4 years later, the co-hosts would shock the world in exciting fashion. Was this a case of home field advantage? Maybe, but the results speak for themselves. A memorable group saw them defeat the Polish 2-0 in Busan, and a Clint Mathis goal had them working hard against the Americans, netting a 78th minute equalizer to draw 1-1. And a famous win over the Portuguese 1-0 saw them win the group and advance to the knockout stages for the very first time. It took extra time versus the Italian powerhouse to win 2-1 with a golden goal in the 117th minute. The Spanish took them to penalties in a tight 0-0 where they converted all 5 shots to advance to the semi-final. Michael Ballack's 75th minute winner for the Germans in the capital of Seoul dashed the dreams of a nation, and many of the rest of us, it must be said as well, bringing an end to a historic run and matched them up against Turkey in the 3rd place game. This one was the first time I had watched a For the Badge match at the World Cup, and what a game it was, setting a precedent that still continues to this day. The 3-2 loss to Turkey in the 3rd place game did nothing to tarnish the glory the co-hosts found on the world stage in 2002. 4 years on, Controversy over both the manager during qualifying and the man who took the helm for the tournament took headlines in this one in Germany, but despite this, they were able to win the opener versus Togo 2-1. A struggling France team that still made the final were held to a 1-1 draw versus the Koreans in Leipzig, leaving them with every opportunity to qualify. But a disappointing result against the likes of Philippe Sinderos and Alexander Frey 2-0 to the Swiss had them crashing out, with most citing the managerial madness as the main problem this time round. South Africa 2010 saw them go undefeated in the last round of qualifying and put them in a group many suggested they should be able to advance from. A good win versus Greece to kick off the tournament gave them a good position going into the second game versus Argentina, where they were blasted apart by a Gonzalo Higuain hat trick. This set them up for a game against Nigeria, where a draw would see them through, and the 2-2 saw them face the Uruguayans in the round of 16, where they would fall just short to a Luis Suarez brace. In Brazil 2014, it would prove to be a disappointing showing and a forgettable tournament at best, with an opening draw against the Russians, followed by a damaging loss to the Algerians, where they shipped 4 goals. They bowed out against the Belgians with only pride to play for and were actually pelted with confectionery on their return to the capital of Seoul. 4 years ago, injuries and perhaps a lack of identity plagued the Koreans in Russia, a tournament for which they barely qualified. In a shocking group that saw defending champions bow out with a 2-0 loss in the third game versus the Koreans, the men from the Far East were unable to take advantage of this win, having already been eliminated by losing to both Sweden and Mexico in their first 2 games. Well, the perennials are back in Qatar for 2022. The Koreans are drawn once again into another tough group. They'll be bolstered by Heung-min Son saying he will make it to the tournament, and he'll look to extend his lead at the top of the goal-scoring charts for the South Koreans by channeling the spirits of heroes like Park Ji-sung and Hong Min-bo, who played in 4 cups with 16 appearances and 2 goals. Son will have to be at his best to lead the nation past the Uruguayans, Portuguese, and the Ghanaians to bring back the spirit of the 2002 side. Can they be the most entertaining team in the tournament once again? Only time will tell.